Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Show Must Go On. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is Rich Celenza. Let's get the show started. Okay, so you are a filmmaker, director, and producer. Was this a childhood dream of yours, or was this something that came to you later on in life?
Well, I think going with my father to a lot of movies at a young age, he started taking me to the movies, I think. Well, I don't remember not going to the movies with my father. He was a huge film buff. And so was my mother. My mother liked Disney kind of films, like those films. But my father had no fear of taking me even to like R-rated films, which I know may not be appropriate. I think he thought sometimes I would just fall asleep. But I think one of the first films I ever saw, which was the Lenny Bruce story, and that was I was 3 or 4 years old, which is entirely inappropriate. Um, but I remember him taking me to movies and me thinking they're real. And then he started to take me to Bruce Lee movies because we're in Chicago, and the South Side of Chicago would show double feature Bruce Lee films. And he, as a very young boy, I mean, I was so young, I would stand up in the chair and he'd kind of hold me. He was a huge Bruce Lee fan, and obviously Chuck Norris back then, Clint Eastwood, and so on. Um, so I think I just loved films and just the whole process. Then as I got older, I kind of fell in love with Martin Scorsese's films, and I love documentaries. Being from an Italian neighborhood and stuff, I finally got to see like Raging Bull. I saw and I said, "Oh my God, this is what I'm looking for. Something that looks like a documentary and a film." It almost blew it kind of blew me away. And then I loved Quentin Tarantino as time went on, and a lot of filmmakers. But my dream was to make films, and then I actually had my daughter, and I was for many, many years, I collected money legally and illegally all over the United States, including the Bahamas. So when I left even when I was making films, my father had a very large vending business in the state of Florida, collecting money there. And then we used to gamble. And then I would write a lot of notes and always be writing screenplays if they were shorts or feature films. And then eventually, I had a film in mind. It was about the underground world of gambling in Chicago, and I had like 200 pages. It was all handwritten. This is probably like 1997. We would go on junkets to gamble in Biloxi, Bahamas, California, Atlantic City, Vegas. And while I was doing that in the airplane, I would just keep writing them. And my daughter was born, and then my daughter ended up being very sick. She needed a liver transplant. So I had to go to Chicago. They had one of the best doctors in the world there. I was living in Florida, so I just went and moved there. And my whole dream was to make films. And I saw my daughter, who almost passed away on us because she was so sick at different times. I said, I, I had all the gifts to go follow my dream and do what I wanted to do. And I just kind of blew it off. She may never even have the opportunity to go after any of her dreams, or go after anything. So I kind of made a promise to myself. It said, if my daughter gets healthy, I'm going to go make my own film. And we did get her healthy. And then, believe me, these are low budget, micro budget films. So I wrote, produced, and directed them. But I did go, and we shot it in over 100 locations. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. My first film was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, the most stressful, the most aggravating. And back in like this, you got to realize we're shooting this in 99. So I'm kind of shooting it with high eights. It was an independent film. And then we went to the PD 150 and for my next film. But I did two films back to back, actually, which was crazy in itself. And then I went on to write like 6 screenplays altogether, 4 features, one I optioned, 2 I made, and then I wrote a couple pilots. But I didn't mean to get long-winded on you, but that's kind of the long story behind that.
So, did you go to any classes, get any books, or did you just jump in when you started producing them and just figured it out?
This is a great question because it goes back to our question regarding fear and confidence. Because I think, again, when it comes to confidence, people aren't always confident in everything they're doing. So when I was younger, there's Columbia Film School in Chicago, and I heard about it after I graduated high school, and I went to Florida. And then I didn't even know about film schools because this goes back to like 86, 87. I'm dating myself, but film schools weren't on my radar. I went to a Catholic private school, like I said, which was definitely more business, white collar orientated. And then my school in Florida was kind of just, go kind of party and have a good time. Florida back then was like a whole different Florida than it is now in the mid 80s. But I went down and I said, what's this place, film school and whatever? So they said, yeah, you could go there and they teach you how to make movies. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I drove down there and I was actually a lot heavier. I used to be like 250 pounds. I lifted a lot of weights and I used to wear long leather coats with gold and all this. And I pulled up and I parked and I was walking there and I seen all these different young people and they weren't that much younger than me. I just knew they were entirely different than me, actors, producers, whatever. They were all around and I was walking. And I'll tell you what was interesting is confident as I was, I wasn't confident. Again, I felt like I did not belong there. And they were all looking at me like I was nuts. And I'm like, hey, do they do classes? Like I sounded stupid. I didn't know what I was doing at all. I'm like, hey, you can make movies here, or how do you do this? You sign up, you pay. I didn't know if there was seminars. I didn't know. And they were kind of laughing at me. And I think, again, stepping out of your comfort zone. So I left there kind of embarrassed. And I have an uncle whose wife cuts hair for a lot of the major films and television shows in Chicago. And he gave me an advice. He goes, Rich, you always wanted to make films, but you never surrounded yourself with anyone who makes films. So you have to learn. If you're going to make movies, most likely you're going to have to be around people that know what they're doing. You're going to have to be around, it could be actors or producers or other directors, executive producers. I had to learn the business. And I kind of neglected that even with my first film. And then my second film, I finally realized, you know, you're really only as good as the talent that surrounds you. But yeah, that's in a nutshell. I didn't go to film school, but what I did do is I started to go to all these film festivals before I made films. And I actually went to see, this is a crazy story. I went to go see Haxon, the guys who made the Blair Witch. There's two directors, Ed, Dan, Stan. Anyways, I went to see one of them. It wasn't Ed. I went, he convinced me, you know, if the Blair Witch guys, which was in Orlando, Florida, which where I was living, they made that film when they came out of UCF. And I said, hey, if they can make the Blair Witch, I can make a film. I went and made a film, and believe it or not, I ended up running into them at my buddy's Italian restaurant, Ed, the other director. And I said, you guys inspired me to make a movie. And I said, would you like to ever review my movie? I'm editing it now. And he's like, of course I would. He got a copy of my film. He gave me really positive feedback. I said, thank you. And I go, I don't know, should I just quit this thing? He's like, dude, I think you should make movies. And I said, well, I have another script. Here it is. If you want to ever check it out. He's like, make this movie, make this movie. So I made my second feature film. And then I wrote another pilot. He hit me up and said, I know you always have all these ideas. Do you have a concept? Because we're going to be doing this slate of films. And I wrote a pitch. He loved it. I wrote a screenplay and they ended up optioning it. So it's kind of funny how life is. I went, and that's kind of really how I guess from the beginning to the middle and whatever. You never know what you're going to end up doing in your life or who you're going to be working with. The one guy, the team that inspired me to make movies, next thing you know, you fast forward 10 years, they're optioning a screenplay from you. So
that's amazing. So in all of your experience, what were some of the things you learned? Because when you go see a movie, you don't get to see behind the scenes. You don't get to see all of the work it takes to create that film. So what were some of the things you learned that in the process of making the film, you thought, I have to do this, I have to do that? Oh my gosh, like what were some of the shocks of creating films?
Learning to do less. I kind of exhausted myself because I wanted to do it all, but I'm crazy like that. I wanted to learn it all, but it kind of took a toll on me and it hurt the project. You know, you learn on the film or in the film industry, you know, don't get me wrong, you can produce it, right? And even if you want to be in it, you could kind of be in it. But if you got to take on every other component, wardrobe, audio, visual, shooting it, you know, even going editing it and all these, there's so many different things going on, even finding locations, contracts, all the legalities, getting distribution. All these things are daunting. And again, it's a privilege to make films. I'm not going to say it's not. Raising the money. It's like if I said, so when I went on to do my third film, we wanted to do a slate of films. I had two pilots and 2 features I want to shoot. I took on a production partner, like I said in the other podcast, but I'm like, you take this part on and I'm going to take this part on, but I'm also going to hire a team to, you know, because after making a couple films and making a lot of connections in Chicago and LA and New York, even my entertainment lawyer and all these different things, I'm like, I have to depend on them because if I'm going to do this again, I want to make sure it's right. And what was amazing, the first film was the hardest part of my life, probably creating something. And the second was the funnest. So I think the third may have been really unbelievable because I definitely think at that point, you know, after you make more and more of anything, you get better at it, I believe, and more comfortable doing it and know what works for you. And again, what doesn't, creating that specific blueprint that I know would work for me. And it's really about surrounding myself with the best talent this time, not trying to be at all. And I think a lot of people, when you're an independent filmmaker or you're an independent artist, you know, you can't afford all these other things. And also you're naive in saying, I can do all these things anyways, and I want to do it. And that's great. But if I was to give advice, I have a lot of friends that are producers that are very well-known directors, famous, all that. You know, if you're starting off, go work for them for free or get around people that are doing it, because you may go somewhere for 6 months and learn something that somebody may not learn for 10 or 20 years, or you may spend millions of dollars kind of blowing it. And the film industry is really like that. If you're going to go to film school, go to LA, maybe New York. I'd hate to say it, going to film school somewhere else, not bad. You graduate, you have this education. Again, now you have to start networking and connecting with all these people that are kind of doing what you want to do. You might as well go where they're already doing it. That kind of makes sense. So, and that could go for any part. It could be a casting agent if you want to be that. Again, if you want to be a makeup guy, you want to do wardrobe, go where they're doing it. Do it for free for a while. I'm not exaggerating. Learn as much as you can, because if you're great or you're good, they're only going to give you more work, or they're only going to get behind you. And, or if you're shitty, you're going to get kind of exposed. You're going to be late. If you're lazy or you're not that talented, you're like, holy cow, I didn't know how much hard work. I didn't realize I'd be on the set this long. I didn't realize the weather, or I'd have to go here and live here for 3 months or 6 months, or all these different types of things. I would recommend that. That doesn't mean you have to do that for the rest of your life. But again, if you have confidence and you have a script you want to do, a short, a feature, sometimes you just got to do it if you have the opportunity, because a lot of times life can't throw you a curveball, because something can happen to you physically or mentally, or you could get in a car accident, or you could just, sometimes a lot of people blow off things that they want to do at that point in time when they have the opportunity, as you know, and then they regret it. I'm very fortunate that I did what I did. But did it hurt my relationships? A lot of them, yes. Did it take a toll on my marriage? Yes. Did it take a toll on even my surroundings in general? Yes, because I became obsessed with it. And that's kind of, making films it's not a joke. And it's usually 5 to 7 years by the time you write it, produce it, shoot it, or I should say pre-production, production, post, edit, market, distribution, market. It's a long process. So be in for a long road.
I definitely agree on you with the volunteering, even if you go to college, because college doesn't even give you the true. I went to college for theater. When I left, I realized I didn't get the true experience, professional experience of what theater actually means. And it was then that I noticed that I didn't really want to be an actor as much as I thought, because, you know, the contracts, and when you become on Broadway in professional theater, you literally have no life. They expect theater to be your only life. And just, I've realized there was so much I didn't know about it. And I didn't have the passion and the commitment to want to really do it, which I didn't know that when I was going to college. And so I definitely tell people, you should really, no matter what you want to do, you want to do nails, you want to do hair salon, ask a place, can I come and volunteer? Because it's the work you don't see. It's not bad. It's just, it's not all great as you think. And that's how you know if you really want to do it, if you're okay with the downside of that job. And so I definitely believe in volunteering and working in a business before you consider doing it, because there's always that side of any job that people go, oh, wow, I got to do this. So somewhat off the subject. Go ahead.
No, I was less than 1%, or is it about 1% make a living in the film and theater industry, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not saying people can't make it, but you might as well go around people that you know are succeeding and take that knowledge again, but make it your own, like we discussed earlier. But you got to take an honest approach. I think some people live in this fantasy that they're going to go become the next Tom Cruise or the next Brad Pitt or all these things, actors or even directors, or that's most likely not going to happen. But I'm the last person who says, go after everything you want to go after, but take an honest approach to it. You got to understand you're going to go through a lot of rejection. Most likely you're not going to all of a sudden probably get discovered out of nowhere, especially if you don't even have anything to prove. Nowadays it's so I don't want to say flooded, but there's even when I was doing films, I didn't have the opportunity like YouTube and all these different things to kind of show off my work. So I tell a lot of people that want confidence regarding this subject matter is create things, upload them, right? Because if you want to make a living at this, people are going to have to like your stuff. I don't care who you are. I don't care if it's 1% of the world, but if you want to get money or you want to get investors, you're going to have to make money to pay them back. But in the meantime, start kind of experimenting and seeing what people want to see out of you or what you're really kind of good at. Because a lot of times, I'll be the first one to say, you create a feature film and you think, oh, this is going to work out and everybody's going to want to see it. No one really gives a shit because there's right now hundreds of thousands of other feature films being shot now. So, there's a lot of testing ground and you get exposed real quick. You put stuff up, you think, and if you, is it good? Is it bad? Get feedback and kind of take it from there.
Very much so. So kind of off the subject, you also just chose to produce a podcast. What was the reasoning behind that and what kind of guests have you met during your hosting?
Yeah, so I always want to do a podcast. My mom always wanted me to do radio. I used to go frown and say it's because of my face, because I was in film and TV or like trying to do that. So she always wanted me to do radio stuff. And I love small talk. I'm very interested in what other people are saying. And I was about 12 years ago, I had a close friend and he went to school. He was an engineer and he was a musician. And he's like, Rich, you're crazy. You know so many people and you just say whatever you want to say. And we got to, let's do our own radio show. Back then it was like the internet radio podcasts weren't that popular. So we did a couple and it was a blast. I actually had one of the top drug dealers in the state of Florida who's a friend of mine who said, I'll go on there. I just can't, don't expose me. Like we're talking about drugs and how he thinks how many drug dealers are lazy, how that you can make your own drugs and how you can kind of get, it was like a bit, but it was legit. And he was so funny. It was from Puerto Rico. But then I ended up moving to San Diego and going back and forth to LA because I was working on some other things. So fast forward, I ended up traveling for about 12 years. And I said, if I ever get the chance, I want to go back and do a podcast. And I started it about a year before COVID. And I kind of was experimenting. I would just rant for 10 minutes. And then I would also interview people, just audio. And then COVID hit. And I said, well, and Zoom came out. And I said, well, this is a good opportunity for me to kind of start interviewing people. I have the time finally, because a lot of people want to be on my podcast. And I didn't have time because I was traveling so much. And also like Zoom was kind of frowned upon, where now it was kind of openly you can do them on Zoom, right? Where before it had to be in a studio with cameras and to be legit. But then after COVID hit, everyone's like, well, we can't do that now. We have to use Zoom. So that worked out. So I reached out to like 60 of the most unique people I knew, health and wellness, actors, producers, directors, people, models. My cousin, who's a really well-known makeup artist in Chicago, to give me a heads up. I even had people that were firemen, big chief of firemen through COVID, what they were going through, people that worked for the airlines, all different types of people that I knew were extremely interesting. Buddha, like people that were, monks and all the, got all these different people. And I did it and it exhausted me. I was doing 2 to 3 a day. And I just, let me knock this out. I was having fun and it was working out really well. And then I just said, I got to take a break. So I went back to doing my rants or just doing some with a co-host friend of mine in Orlando. We would go back and forth and do them ourselves. And then recently, and then I actually started to get hit up by a lot of people, started to build momentum. And so recently I've done some more, mainly people that are in the health and wellness industry that wanted to be in it. So I just had one of the top, a vegan, who's the only one who has a true vegan supplement company. I've had some really well-known people within marketing, because I kind of want to call people out on their bullshit a lot of times, because a lot of marketers I think are full of shit. But I had 2 really well-known marketers. I had some younger people on there. I have one of my assistants, I guess you could say, or a friend of mine, Jason, who helps me, who's one of my clients. And we do stuff with him. He's teaches Buddhism, and he's an incredible chef who is like even beyond being, he finds the most amazing ingredients and the most unique ingredients. And he's traveled all over the world and makes these dishes that nobody else makes. So that's kind of been my podcast thing a little bit. I also, if someone wants to come on my podcast, I don't know them, I'll charge them if they want to be on my podcast, if they wanted me to help market their thing, because I'll put a lot of time and effort into it. It's really no money, but I'm like, I only have so much time in a day to do that. My YouTube consulting and all those other things. But that's kind of how I found you, somebody who I actually interviewed, who used to be in television, who had her own shows in Chicago. My cousin, who's a well-known editor in the city of Chicago, she used to do the show. So then she said, Rich, I'm going to send you this directory of podcasts of people, and you should go on other people's podcasts. And I have been on other people's. They would hit me up all the time, and I'd be like, listen, I don't know if I have the time, but I went through them and I said, let me pick and choose the ones I think that I'm interested in taking the time out to be on. And then that's how I found you. What is that? The broadcasting, what was that called again? I think it's the podcast and radio media list podcast. Were you on there? Is that where I found you?
Maybe.
The podcast radio shows directory. I think that's where I saw you. Maybe. Anyway.
I'm not sure. I don't think I put myself on one.
Really? I don't know. How did I find you? Somebody must have led me to you.
I don't know. I mean, do you know the name of the person you're talking about?
Denise Dorman? She's out of Chicago. That's okay. I don't know how we found each other then, but I found you one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming it might be radio guest list.
Could be.
It might be one of those. I put myself on there.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Nice.
But it's not a complete directory. It's only up there for like, I think, a certain amount of time, then it comes down.
Gotcha.
So I'm not sure. She must have worked for someone else, because her name doesn't sound familiar to me. I don't remember interviewing her. I have interviewed other people in film and theater, things of that nature.
Right.
So I'm not sure.
Who knows, right?
So thank you so much for being on the show. Is there any encouraging words to people? Because like I said, for me, my own personal story, like you said, I had the fake, and when I was 18, I'll admit it, I was arrogant. You couldn't tell me no. I had this wild thought that I was going to be, and it's funny, I kind of almost feel bad saying this. I thought for sure I was going to be the first person in the history of the Tony Awards to win Best Actor in all 4 acting roles. And Audra McDonald has already done that. So she took away my dream. The thing is, at the time I thought of that, I didn't realize theater is not as fun as high school made it to be. As far as you don't get the serious professional. Even in college, you can't, because you only do the show usually Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that's it. You don't really do the 8 shows a week. And you do have an understudy. They prefer you not to use them as often and things of that nature, and the contracts and, the unions and paying your dues and all of that. No one taught me. And I didn't realize the work it takes to be an actor. And I realized I just didn't want to do all the work. So any suggestions or encouraging words to those who just look at films and go, oh, I want to do that, and they really don't understand behind it, not necessarily discouraging people to not be in film. What can they do to see whether or not they truly want to do this? And if not, how can they find their true gift, or what they really want to have a passion for?
Back to creating your own kind of, I think we all have to understand, I love that you said you wanted to be the first person to do all those things, right? I'm just saying the 4 categories that you wanted to win in, right? Because that kind of led you to who you are now, though. So if you maybe didn't believe in doing that, may have not led you to become what you're doing now, maybe in a podcast. I'm just saying, for instance, sometimes, why can't you dream big? And sometimes that dream doesn't really make sense now, but that dream led you to other things that led you to where you are now, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah. So like, I wanted to keep making films. Then I realized I'm exhausted from this. So when I was making, after doing back-to-back independent feature films, and then I said writing a bunch of screenplays, I was exhausted. And then I said, you know what? I want to write a couple books now. I want to get away from it. And then I said, hey, let me create a program, right? Or let me start a consulting firm. I could look back and say, wow, I failed because I wanted to create this slate of films after my 2 feature films. But just, it's all it is a journey. We have to understand. And it's not always about succeeding or failing, because what your goals are now, they may be much different later. So I think a lot of times, especially like say you with theater, I don't know how you feel. You may be like, oh, that was my dream. I failed at my dream, or I went after that. I realized it's not what I wanted. But the thing is, you went after it. You learned. I think most people are afraid to even take that approach. You got to understand that, and things are always changing. Like the film industry is changing. People are making movies now on iPhones. That's crazy. Like the technology and how you have all this software and how you can upload things so quickly. When I was making a film, oh my gosh, it was kind of a nightmare. I'd hate to say it. I wasn't even able to text my actors. So I had to fax all the lines if I made any changes. I had to call them if there was a schedule change. Even every location I went to, I had to personally go there. I had to bring a contract. They had to approve it. Then I'm dealing with SAG. I have to go there with all the contracts. I have my lawyers. All this stuff is very accessible now. I can't even, the simplicity of it. But maybe if I started now, I'd be like, wow, this is real hard, right? But my point regarding anything is, things are always going to be maybe hard, but they're also a way to make them easier too. But have fun, go. But I'm telling you, you're going to fail again. And you're going to realize if you go after your dreams or goals in theater, film, whatever, it's a long road, right? And if you want to be there, you're going to be there. If not, you're going to get out. It's almost like you're going to get almost pushed out, because so many people, it's very similar to athletics to a certain point, because if you want to be a professional athlete, you cannot bullshit your way through that. Let's call it for what it is. You are not going to be in NFL, NBA, baseball, hockey at the high level. There's no way you are going to get destroyed unless you're elite. And I think a lot of times with acting and directing and producing, to really make that a living or get to maybe a higher level, you have to be elite. I mean, some actors may get there because of their parents or, directors. I get it. But for the most part, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get exposed very quickly, because no one's going to tolerate that. If you don't study your lines, if you're not in character, you're not prepared, you're going to get exposed. So saying you want to do something and actually doing it is two different things. I'd say, I talk about it with modeling and acting. Hundreds of millions of people want to be an actor. Hundreds of millions of women and some men want to be models. But what is one, going to make you unique? Number two is, are you going to be consistent, and are you going to be talented? You know what I mean? That's really, and it's a lot of times you may be horrible at the beginning, but you may be a late bloomer as well. So as you know, a lot of people in film or theater, they break out in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Some break out when they're 18, but then again, they may peter out when they're 30 or 25. So, the film, theater, that whole game is a long-term game. It's kind of the opposite of modeling, where it's a short-term game, most likely for most models. But with actors, if you really love it, like you may in 3 years go, hey, you know what? I want to go back to the theater, but instead of maybe performing, I want to, maybe direct something, or I want to assist, I want to host my own show. I don't want to produce it, or I want to produce it, but I don't want to direct it or be in it. You don't know how that's going to fly, but stay true to your passion and just keep moving forward. That's what I tell people.
All right. So I just thought of one more question, and then I'm
Sure,
gonna let you go. I promise I won't bother you anymore.
No, I believe me. I scheduled you for an hour and a half just in case whatever.
So last question. Something they don't teach enough in school and in college, which doesn't make any sense to me, is the importance of work ethics, and that no matter how talented you are in any industry, if you have no work ethics or really good at work ethics, you won't get work. And so first, from your own experience, what are some of the things you wish employees knew about work ethics, especially in the entertainment field, and the importance of, yes, you could be talented, work ethics actually come before talent?
Yeah, I think core values kind of gets wrapped into there a little bit, because if, as far as a director goes or a producer, you set the standard. It's kind of like a teacher in the classroom. If you kind of let it go, it's going to go. But if you're a director or even a producer, you have to set the tone, right, of what is going to happen here, because you are in charge of actually everything going on. I'm not saying I can control my actor or everything he does, but if I'm giving him a script, I expect him to look a certain way, dress a certain way, say a certain thing, and kind of behave a certain way, right? If you're playing an Italian, I can't have you with an Irish accent. I'm just saying. Or if I have you very an urban person, I can't have you sounding like you're from the country. Or if you dress if you're a businessman, I can't have you looking like you're a skater, right? I'm just saying. So, but it starts, I believe, with the top a little bit with really, I think, the director and the producer. And again, with core values, if people see how passionate you are about what you're doing, they're going to have to match it. If not, I'd hate to say it, you got to get rid of them. And you're going to, and sometimes though with film or TV, I used to get in some beef sometimes with my actors because a lot of them would come there, they'd be late. I remember when you're first hiring your actors, they couldn't be more excited to be a part of your project. And then once they get involved, and then you're kind of, putting the heat on them a little bit, saying, I don't care that your girlfriend broke up today. I don't care that you came here and you're hungry. I don't care if you're hungover. None of that has to do with that. You have to come here prepared to be this character whenever we're filming or whenever we're shooting this. There's no games to be played. This isn't about you. Understand you're being someone else. So the quicker they understand that, and if you tolerate them kind of playing you a little bit or bullshitting, and believe me, I've had a lot of that stuff, especially if you're dealing with a higher level actor that may be used to getting away with certain things. But if they know you're not bullshitting, because a lot of times you're not only letting me down, you're letting the team down, or the cast down, I should say, in this case. And I'm not going to let you do that, because no actor is bigger than any project. I don't care who the hell you are. This is a big, and that's the same with theater. This is one big nucleus of all of us coming together to make this work. I don't care if you have no lines, and I don't care if you're the lead actor and you have extras, or if you're in you're second or third or whatever the hell you are. It all has to work. This is like, a group effort. So I would say, back to core values. I know that sounds weird because we always think of that personally, like what's my core values and yours. But my core values when I would get to the set is I want to do the best job I can to make it accommodating for them to do the best job that they can do. They better do the same for me.
That is all the time we have for you today on the show Must Go On. I want to thank our guest, Rich Celenza, for stopping on by and sharing his journey. And for you, the audience, for watching. Thank you. Have a great day.